Godzilla was supposed to be unstoppable. Not a creature you chase, but a presence you endure. The kind of monster that does not run, it arrives and the city starts shrinking around it. Sirens become background noise, streets turn into corridors. People stop being brave and start being small. That is the contract of Godzilla. Fear with weight and destruction that feels ancient. But the 1998 version was built under pressure that never stopped squeezing. Getting it approved was a brutal fight, one that nearly killed the movie before the cameras ever rolled. Then the real moments got real on purpose, with fish, jaws, and close-up fear built to hit the lens. And even after 1998, the story kept echoing until 16 years later, Redemption arrived and rebuilt the franchise. These are 10 weird facts about Godzilla, the blockbuster that did not just stomp through New York, it stomped straight into the franchise's most chaotic identity crisis. Number 1. Hollywood's Godzilla did not begin as a monster movie. It began as a decade-long stare-down. For years, Tojo treated Godzilla like a crown jewel you do not hand to strangers, no matter how much money they wave. And one guy kept pushing anyway, producer Henry G. Saperstein. He already lived inside Tojo's orbit, distributing their films in the US, and he kept returning with the same pitch in different clothes. Godzilla could be global. Godzilla could be American. Godzilla could be an event. Tojo kept saying no, not once, not twice, for roughly 10 years. Then the breakthrough arrived in the weirdest way possible, not through a Godzilla meeting, through a completely different character. Saperstein owned Mr. Magoo through UPA, so he sat down with Sony producers Kerry Woods and Robert N. Freed to talk about a Mr. Magoo project. Except Saperstein did what he always did. He hijacked the conversation and steered it back to his obsession, Godzilla, again and again. And eventually, the room stopped humoring him and started listening. Once Woods and Freed caught the fever, they tried the normal route. They pitched Columbia. Rejected. They pitched TriStar. Rejected again. Same wall, different door. So they did the thing you only do when you know the idea is bigger than the executives in the room. They went higher. They took it to Sony chairman Peter Guber, and that's when the tone changed. Guber did not treat Godzilla like a risky foreign import. He treated the hesitation like insanity. This is an icon. This is a brand. This is a giant monster event movie that sells itself. And with pressure coming from the top, TriStar's no stopped being an answer. Number 2. Getting Godzilla into Hollywood was not a shake hands and go make a movie deal. Once TriStar finally got Tojo to say yes, Tojo made it clear what that yes actually meant. First came the control on paper. There were licensing fees just to keep the character in play, plus an upfront payment to even enter the room. Tojo also protected the parts of the empire they cared about most, keeping key rights in Japan and making sure they still benefited from the movie's success outside the US. This wasn't Hollywood buying Godzilla, it was Hollywood renting him, with Tojo still holding the receipt. But the money was only the surface. The real message was about identity. Tojo did not want their monster translated into something else. Godzilla, to them, wasn't just a brand name you can slap on a random creature design. He was a legacy, a symbol, a character with rules. So they did something that says everything about how nervous they were. They sent Sony a 4-page set of guidelines for how Godzilla was allowed to be presented on screen. Basically a mini rulebook that screamed, "Do not mess this up." And that's what makes the 1998 version feel even more loaded in hindsight. This wasn't Hollywood being given free rein to reinvent a monster. This was a global icon being handed over with conditions attached, like Tojo saying, "You can borrow him, but we're watching." Number 3. Godzilla was officially approved in 1992, But approved didn't mean cameras. It meant a long, messy waiting period where the project kept getting reshaped, delayed, and passed around while the industry changed underneath it. By the time it finally hit theaters in 1998, 6 years had gone by, and Jurassic Park had already raised the bar for what a giant creature movie was supposed to look like. By 1994, it started to feel real when John DeBont, fresh off Speed, signed on to direct. And his take wasn't a small tweak, it was a full mythology rewrite, pushing Godzilla into bigger myth sci-fi territory with Atlantis-style origins and a larger cosmic threat. Less force of nature, more built protector in a war. Then the money slammed the door. DeBont's plan was expensive, the studio didn't want to pay for it, and when he walked, the movie entered the worst phase any blockbuster can hit. It was alive, famous, and completely homeless. No clear direction, no stable vision, just a title everyone wanted to cash in on, and nobody wanted to be blamed for ruining it. So the chair stayed empty while big names circled. Tim Burton, James Cameron, David Fincher, even Clive Barker. Whether those conversations were serious or speculative, the point is the same. The project had become a hot potato, huge upside, huge risk. That's when it finally snapped into a new shape. Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin came in as the guys who could actually push a monster movie over the finish line at blockbuster scale. They didn't arrive to preserve a museum piece. They arrived to take control and rebuild Godzilla into their own kind of event. So the 1998 film wasn't born from one clean plan. It was born from years of resets, rejected budgets, abandoned visions, and a project that survived purely because someone kept dragging it back onto the table. Number 4. At first, the plan was the obvious one. Make Godzilla look like Godzilla. Effects legend Stan Winston was involved early, and the concepts leaned closer to the classic silhouette, the kind of shape audiences already had burned into their memory. Then Roland Emmerich took the wheel and flipped the rules. He didn't want a slow, towering stop machine. He wanted speed, a Godzilla that could run like a predator, not a walking monument. That's how Patrick Tatopoulos got pulled in and told to build something leaner, longer, and more animal than myth. The result was a radical pivot. Less ancient force of nature, more fast, hunted, panicked creature in a real city. And the face had an influence that sounds almost silly until you remember how personal design can be. Tatopoulos has talked about pulling inspiration from Shere Khan in Disney's The Jungle Book, specifically that strong chin and agi he remembered from childhood. That detail bled into the final look, and it's part of why the 1998 Godzilla's head feels so distinct and so controversial. There were even ideas that got floated and dropped along the way, like giving the creature a color-changing chameleon-style camouflage defense. That would have pushed the design even further into giant mutant animal, but it never made it to the screen. Of course, none of it mattered unless Tojo approved it. Emmerich and Tatopoulos had to present the new creature directly to Tojo, and the reaction became its own legend. The room was cold, almost silent. They were told to come back the next day, and eventually Tojo signed off, even if it was clearly not the version of Godzilla they would have designed. But here's the sharpest irony. After all that fighting over the monster, all that effort to rebuild the monster from the ground up, the finished movie barely gives him to you. Godzilla's total screen time is under 11 minutes, roughly 8% of the runtime. So the most argued over version of Godzilla ends up feeling like a glimpse, not a presence. A monster redesigned to be unforgettable, then used like a shadow that keeps slipping away. Number 5. The movie sells a lot of chaos with CGI, but 2 of its nastiest, most physical moments were only convincing because the crew built them like gross, practical problems you could actually touch. First is the fish market bait trap. When they try to lure Godzilla with that ridiculous mountain of fish, it looks like the kind of pile that would stink up the entire block, but they didn't dump a real catch on the ground. The mountain was mostly latex and silicone prop fish made in big, gang-molded sheets, so the crew could rebuild the pile fast after a take got wrecked. Then they made it look freshly hauled and disgustingly wet by coating the props so they'd glisten under the lights. That shine is why the whole gag feels so tangible, like the slime and weight are real enough to make you flinch. Then comes the Madison Square Garden sequence, where the movie suddenly gets intimate with the monster. Those close-ups hit different because they weren't depending on pure CGI. For the tight shots, they used huge animatronic pieces of Godzilla's head, jaws, neck, and shoulders, so the actors had something real to react to right in front of them. A physical target, a moving machine, controlled jaw snaps, blinks, subtle shifts that make the creature feel present instead of added later. That's the weird trick. The most convincing moments in a movie people call fake Godzilla are the ones where the crew stopped trying to fake it and just built the disgusting parts for real. Number 6. After all the fights over the monster, the movie makes another strange choice. It anchors the chaos with a lead that feels almost too normal. Matthew Broderick plays Nick Tatopoulos like a guy who wandered into the wrong genre. He's smart, cautious, constantly blinking like he's still trying to process that the city is collapsing around him. And that accidental quality becomes the whole vibe. Instead of a classic action hero, you get an everyman scientist who keeps getting pushed forward because nobody